I'm going to go ahead and now walk you through the agenda of what to expect in terms of content. Today, we are going to give a broad overview of Columbia Climate School. We are then going to go ahead and transition to discussing the MS in Climate Finance curriculum, specifically both the Climate Core and Finance Core courses. We will also discuss professional development opportunities within Columbia Climate School financial aid, and of course, my favorite part, the application process. And we will conclude the session with a phenomenal faculty panel. If I could just make one word of encouragement to our audience, it's not often that you get faculty on these virtual information sessions. So this is a great time. If you have kind of content questions about the climate finance program or climate finance writ large, these are the leading experts in the field. So by all means, academic questions are definitely encouraged. Uh, Now, I'd like to formally introduce our faculty. First and foremost, joining us today, and again, the faculty panel will begin officially in the second half of the session, but I'd like to formally introduce who our faculty are now. Lisa Sachs, who is Associate Professor of Professional Practice at the Climate School and Director of our MS in Climate Finance program. Professor Sachs also serves as Director of the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment, also known as CCSI. And at CCSI, she established and oversees its interdisciplinary research and advisory work on the alignment of investment law, practice, and policy in sustainable development goals. She's a globally recognized expert in the ways that laws, policies, and business practices shape global investment flows and affect sustainable development. She works with global stakeholders across sectors to understand the interrelations of investment flows and sustainable development and to influence investment policies and practices to promote the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. In addition, is Professor Bruce Usher. Bruce Usher is Professor of Professional Practice and Faculty Director of the Tamer Institute for Social Enterprise and Climate Change at Columbia Business School, as well as Professor of Professional Practice in the Faculty of Climate here at Columbia Climate School. Professor Usher teaches courses on climate change, finance, and business, and is a recipient of multiple teaching awards. Prior to his work at Columbia, he was CEO of Eco Securities Group, which developed greenhouse gas emissions reduction projects in developing countries and was acquired by JP Morgan in 2009. He was previously the co-founder and CEO of Treasury Connect, which provides electronic trading solutions to banks, and it was acquired in 2001. He's an active investor and advisor to entrepreneurial ventures focused on climate change and clean energy, and is chair of the Tamer Fund for Social Ventures. And finally, last but certainly not least, is Zoey Zhou, is an assistant professor of climate here at Columbia Climate School. Her work bridges finance, climate science, and biodiversity with a focus on how financial systems, especially corporate finance and banking, can accelerate nature-positive, climate-resilient, and equitable outcomes. Professor Zhou's work seeks to align financial architecture with sustainability objectives. She serves on the consultation group of Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures and on the Committee for the Connectivity of Asian Voluntary Carbon Markets, shaping frameworks that integrate environmental risks and opportunities in financial decision-making. Professor Zhou's work seeks to reorient financial analysis to better serve global sustainability and inclusive development. So welcome to our faculty. And again, the faculty panel will officially begin around 10:30 a.m. Now let's go ahead and provide a bit of an overview of both Columbia Climate School and the MS in Climate Finance program. So first, let's provide you an introduction to the university and the climate school. When you say Columbia University, you're referring to a major research institution, a blueprint of research universities here in the United States. There's over 20 different schools that fall underneath that umbrella. And the majority of those schools are graduate professional schools. The climate school is the newest school here at Columbia University. It was formally announced in 2020 and launched in 2021. And our ethos is that the world requires knowledgeable leaders to work with businesses, communities, governments, and civil society to address climate change. Columbia Climate School's graduate degree programs and other learning opportunities provide an interdisciplinary knowledge base for climate leaders with diverse interests and backgrounds. And I can't lean into enough the word interdisciplinary. I think the climate finance program is a perfect distillation of that, and I'll talk a little bit about our learning community shortly, but also when you're looking at our specifically our faculty and their backgrounds at the climate school, what they bring to the table, so to speak. It's very important to note that climate touches everything and everyone. And in order to address the challenges of climate change and explore the opportunities within it, we need to take an interdisciplinary approach. I'll also just highlight very briefly is that Columbia Climate School, while we're the newest school, we have decades of experience within specifically climate science and earth and environmental sciences at the university. So, a very close partner for us is Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which celebrated its 75th anniversary recently. And many of the Lamont Doherty faculty teach within Columbia Climate School. Many of our professors are Lamont researchers as well. And something I like to note is that the first research paper, academic research paper that utilized the term global warming actually occurred in the 1970s and was a Columbia University Lamont professor. So again, we have decades of experience in the space. I also now want to highlight Columbia Business School and specifically the partnership the business school plays in the MS in Climate Finance program. So it's a pivotal role in shaping and delivering the MS in Climate Finance program, really because of its interdisciplinary collaboration and expertise in finance and cutting edge climate research. The Columbia Business School has historically been preparing future leaders to address financial challenges of climate change, and the program integrates the strengths of both schools, leveraging those decades of leadership and sustainable business practices, climate innovation to equip students with the necessary skills for impactful careers in climate finance. And that brings us now specifically to talk about the MS in Climate Finance program in particular. So this is a 1 year STEM designated 39 credit hour professional degree program. It is a Columbia Climate School degree, again offered in close collaboration with Columbia Business School. And it integrates climate science with fundamental financial management practices that equip students with financial decision-making skills to respond to climate change. Something that's very important to stress about the MS in Climate Finance program is that this is a Columbia Climate School degree. It is not a dual degree or a joint degree, but it's offered in close collaboration with Columbia Business School, and you see that translate specifically through the academic experience of our students and the courses that are available to them. My colleague Tricia Brown is going to talk about those courses shortly. In terms of what the learning objectives are for the MS in Climate Finance, we want our students to understand the science of climate change and its varying economic, social, and environmental impacts. We want our students to translate the implications of climate research into appropriate financial and business language and decision making. We also want students to assess risks and opportunities associated with climate change. And finally, evaluate the financial tools and strategies that can be applied to accelerate the energy transition and to finance critical investments in mitigation and adaptation. Before we formally discuss a little bit more the curriculum, I would like to give you a sense of who is studying in the MS in Climate Finance program. So our inaugural cohort started this fall 2025. We have a phenomenal group of 59 students that we welcomed into the learning community. Roughly 35% of the students entered directly from an undergraduate university, and 65% entered with full-time work experience. It's an incredibly global audience with over 20 countries of citizenship represented. And in terms of the professional experiences, roughly 63% of our students came from the private sector, 25% from the public sector, and a little over 11% from NGOs. In terms of the male to female ratio, it's actually at parity. And in terms of majors represented, it's well over 40. Again, it's an incredibly interdisciplinary and diverse learning community. I would not say that there is a cookie cutter MS in climate finance student. In terms of their professional backgrounds, you can see we do have representation from organizations like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. We also have students at consultancies that came to us from Ernst & Young and Deloitte. And then we have a number of students that joined us really with more policy background. So we have students that came from the Ministry of Finance in Indonesia. We also have students that came from multilateral organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank. So a very, very diverse learning community and an audience of students that are interested in both eventually going back into either the private sector or the public sector. And you'll hear our faculty discuss that a little bit more during the panel. And now I'm going to go ahead and transition the presentation over to Tricia Brown, one of our program managers here at Columbia Climate School, who works very closely with the MS in Climate Finance program and helps advise our students. So Tricia, by all means, take it away.
Thanks, Alfred. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy to be here with you today. As Alfred mentioned, as the program manager for the MS in Climate Finance, I work very closely with students on all their academic issues, curricular issues, registration issues, graduation requirements, and the like. And I also manage all of the development of programs, co-curricular programs, and support student activities that help round out the program. So Alfred just gave you a bird's eye view, and I want to take you into what the flow looks like when you're in the MS in Climate Finance. So as Alfred mentioned, it's a 39 credit program. It is a fall, spring, summer program, 3 semesters, 3 full semesters. It starts in August with orientation and in the end of August, and then courses kick off in September with core courses in climate and core courses in finance. And the majority of the core courses will be at the climate school that semester. And I'm going to talk more about these courses specifically in a moment. Then the spring semester, you are finishing up your finance core courses at the business school, and you're taking electives across both schools. Then in the summer, you focus on a summer practicum, which is an opportunity to take all of the things you've been learning about in your courses throughout the year and applying that in a learning opportunity, translating these concepts into a real world project or internship. And I'll talk more about that shortly as well. On the next slide, we'll take you through the specific courses that you'll be taking. So across the whole learning community here at the Climate School, one core course is climate change adaptation. Everybody takes that, and it offers an interdisciplinary framework on climate change with perspectives from the natural sciences, from law, from public policy, architecture, anthropology, and more. You also would take with the whole learning community climate change mitigation. That's taught by Professor Lisa Sachs. And in that course, she offers an overview of the technologies, policies, and other tools that can be used to mitigate the impacts of climate change. You have dynamics of climate variability and change, which is a physical science-based understanding of climate change. It builds upon physics. And the course is designed with pacing that accommodates a wide range of backgrounds. And students who feel that it would be helpful are encouraged to take a math and science prep program over the summer to prepare for that course. And then last but certainly not least is the International Climate Finance Core course, also taught by Professor Lisa Sachs. This is a strong foundational course that explores the types of financial instruments and narratives in the global climate finance landscape and how they apply across sectors, across regions, and across institutional settings. And one thing I want to note is that climate justice themes are woven throughout the curriculum. In this course in particular, they are integrated through the exploration of themes of who is disadvantaged and favored in the current financial systems, who pays for climate solutions, how do these different financial instruments and structures of international finance shape what does and doesn't get financed. So that's your climate core. And then on the next slide, we'll talk about your business school core. So you'll start in the fall with Foundations of Valuation and Corporate Finance. These are 2 introductory finance courses. They're required in the MBA program as well. And through these, you'll become familiar with the most common financial instruments, the basics of risk and return, and methods and frameworks for valuing a firm. And then to deepen your foundational knowledge within the program, in the spring, you'll be taking capital markets and investments, climate risk, and climate finance. Climate finance is taught by Professor Bruce Usher, who you'll be hearing from shortly in the faculty panel. And I will say that we often get the question that some students are arriving with significant academic or professional background in finance. There are exemption exams offered in the summer before you begin for the first three courses: Foundations Evaluation, Corporate Finance, Capital Markets. If you pass those exemption exams, it does not mean it shortens the program for you, but it does mean that you have access to business school electives sooner. So that's something to bear in mind. Then I want to on the next slide, we'll talk about the summer practicum, which is either a capstone or an internship. So students are required to be in New York in the summer semester, and they can take advantage of a capstone, which is a live consulting project. You work in small teams with very climate finance aligned projects. You have an external client and a faculty advisor. You meet weekly for course time, and then you also have collaborative work time as well. Those are sourced by the program. Students get to review those in the spring semester and decide. Or some people opt for an internship also based in New York City. These are self-sourced with using the resources of our career team, and some students prefer to get a foot in the door and an employer where they would like to work. And there will also be a pedagogical element to the internship. You would have a supervisor evaluation and a reflection paper at the end to round out that summer practicum. So let me tell you a little bit more on the next slide about the electives. So some of these, this is a view of our climate finance specific electives. Some are popular electives the last few years at the climate school, but most on this list have been designed specifically for the MS in Climate Finance program. So Professor Sachs worked very closely with full-time faculty, with researchers, with practitioners in the field to really identify the key knowledge areas that students would need to know to be very well trained and to have an essential toolkit for an in-depth understanding of climate finance. So you'll see a few examples referenced here. The first one in particular, I just want to call out that it will involve a trip to the UN and another trip to DC to visit the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So there'll be a lot of opportunities through these electives for very hands-on learning, because a lot of them are taught by adjunct faculty who can bring specific case studies into the classroom and let students dive into that. So I also want to point out that some students are also interested in broadening their knowledge beyond climate finance while they're here. They want to get a lot more in-depth knowledge of climate science. So there is a whole nother suite of climate school electives that they can choose from as well. These are just the climate finance oriented ones. Over at the business school, I want to point out that the electives that you'll take in this program are limited to the climate school and the business school. And on the business school side, this is the curated menu that you have to choose from. As you see here, there's a wide range of topics covered. Majority are climate focused and climate aligned, but others, as you see, like financial accounting or corporate financial management, really offer students the opportunity to have a broader set of business school adjacent skills as they're coming out of the program. So it takes advantage of the deep expertise of Columbia Business School, as you see represented here. And then I just want to wrap up by talking about some co-curricular opportunities on the next slide. So just like you're coming from all around the world, you're coming from very different backgrounds, you're coming with different interests and different career goals. So accordingly, in addition to the electives and the core courses, there are numerous co-curricular opportunities here to really meet students' diverse interests and to ground people in fundamental knowledge areas such as these mentioned here and others. Just to give you a couple of examples, the career team has a very deep set of career speakers, but we also have a climate finance practitioner series that complements that. So we bring in speakers from the public sector, like city government, the New York Power Authority. We bring in people from the private sector, investment banks, asset management firm, credit ratings companies, to speak to students. We have skills seminars that happen throughout the year. We just had one the other day Someone from JP Morgan came in and talked about venture capital valuation. That was super well received by the students. There are research opportunities across campus. There are internships. There are conferences run by various schools at Columbia as well as by student groups. There is CCSI, which Lisa Sachs heads, which Alfred mentions at the top, which runs a number of events, particularly Climate Week events for sure, other events through the year, internships, there are opportunities with them. And last but not least, students really can take advantage of either joining a club or forming their own club, which this year's cohort did. They formed the Columbia Climate Finance Network. That group is focused on bringing in speakers as well and connecting with professional mentors. They just set up something with a private equity professor at the business school to do a case study review. The opportunities are too numerous to mention in this webinar, but I hope you get the point that there are lots of ways to deepen your learning outside the classroom as well. So I pass it back to Alfred.
Thanks, Trisha. So now I'm going to, provide, actually, interestingly, Trisha did highlight some additional career resources, which is great. Just to give you a little bit of a broader sense, there is a dedicated career management team here at Columbia Climate School. I would argue we probably have one of the best ratios of career managers to full-time students within the university. They are phenomenal, very kind of, I think as they describe it, white glove service in terms of a lot of one-on-one appointments, resume, cover letter reviews. They also host employer information sessions, an alumni mentorship program. The Sustainability Skills Seminar has existed for several years, and it's extremely popular among our students. That allows students to, for example, engage in skill seminars on lead certification or sustainability consulting. We also have a environmental and sustainable development career fair held each February, and an exclusive job board site exclusively for Columbia Climate School students. And then student life conferences, a lot of bonding you can see here. Trisha highlighted some new evolutions within the climate school, specifically the Climate Finance Network, which is phenomenal. But I also want to highlight that you're going to be a member of the overarching climate school learning community, both within the MA Climate Society, the MS in Climate, and the MS in Climate Finance. Climate Week is an incredibly rewarding event. It starts right in the fall semester as you are beginning your academic journey. But also, there's a variety of conferences that our students participate in. On the right-hand side, you'll see a group of students that are standing in front of a climate school table banner. They were at a climate tech conference in Washington, D.C. We've also had students that have historically been interested in climate finance. I know it's a new degree program, but we've had a number of students that have participated in a variety of events. So in the upper right corner, that's a group of students that were specifically participating in the Kellogg Morgan Stanley Investing Challenge. So again, wonderful, wonderful conferences and opportunities for you to bond, network, and engage both at Columbia University and outside the university. Now I'll briefly discuss financial aid. So it's very important to note that I'm going to talk about the Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarship momentarily. That does require a separate application. It's a wonderful opportunity and one that Professor Lisa Sachs stewarded and ensured that we had available when we launched the program, which is phenomenal. If anybody's joining us today and is a veteran of the United States military and specifically has 100% of the post 9/11 GI Bill, we're also a Yellow Ribbon Program school that helps partially fund the degree program. If you have any questions about Yellow Ribbon Program, please feel free to contact us directly. We also have Climate School Merit Scholarships, and I want to emphasize that every student that applies is going to be considered for merit scholarship funding. The key there is that you have to apply by the priority deadline, which is January 15th, 2026. Again, I can't emphasize enough, January 15th, 2026. And then, of course, we have an external fellowship directory. And if I can ask my colleague Damaris Diaz, who is assisting with the Q&A, if she can go ahead and link our tuition and financial aid webpage. I think it's always really helpful to see the summary of the scholarship opportunities and the external directories. We also have, of course, federal student loans. We partner with the student financial planning team. And then finally, many of our students also utilize private loans to help fund the degree. I want to briefly discuss the Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarship. So We are offering, which is wonderful, three scholarships covering full tuition for the MS in Climate Finance program. It does require, it's a two steps process. So, step one is applying by the priority deadline, which is January 15th, 2026, and then submitting a separate application, which is housed in the application portal by February 1st, 2026. That application will be asking specifically financial questions because there is a financial need requirement associated with the Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarship. And the scholarship's real intention is, for students contributing to public and nonprofit sectors, and in particular, those from countries with emerging and developing economies, meaning working in those countries. You should have a deep interest in addressing the distortions of climate finance and promoting solutions to sustainability to increase climate investments. And if I could, I want to just highlight briefly the three recipients this year. They're all incredibly diverse in terms of their professional backgrounds, academic journeys, and really it's where they come from in the world. So what we're going to go ahead and do is my colleague Damaris Diaz is going to share in the chat box Chimi Georgie, Monica Alonso Soria, and Pulkit Bajpai's profiles featured in State of the Planet. And anybody that is interested in the Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarship, I encourage you to review their backgrounds. And again, the key here is if you're interested in the Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarship, you must apply by January 15th, 2026, submit your admissions application by then. And then the actual Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarship separate application is due by February 1st. A select number of candidates will be selected for interviews for the Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarship. In terms of the admissions application, it is a holistic review process. That means not one component is going to be the sole determining factor in your admissions decision. There's not a minimum GPA, for example, to determine your admissibility. In terms of the requirements, we ask that you upload your resume. We also have a quantitative resume. Damaris, if you could also share the PDF file of what that quantitative resume looks like, just so you have a helpful guide in terms of the format we like to see. We also ask for two letters of recommendation. One should be academic if you've been enrolled in a university, specifically an undergraduate university in the last 5 years. And then for those of you joining us where English is not your native language and was not the language of instruction in your university, specifically your undergraduate university, we do require a TOEFL, an IELTS, or a Duolingo English test. And we do have minimum scores associated with those to ensure that you have the necessary English foundation to succeed in our program. And the minimums are 100 on the TOEFL, 7.5 on the IELTS, and a 135 on the Duolingo English test. The final component is the statement of purpose. And again, all of you joining today should take advantage of our January 15th priority deadline. By submitting your application by the priority deadline, it increases your chances of merit scholarship funding consideration, and it also affords you the opportunity to formally apply for the Stanley Park Climate Finance Scholarships. Decisions will be released in March. And then finally, our final deadline is March 1st, 2026. Applying to the MS in Climate Finance program, that statement of purpose, I think, is a critical component. It really allows you to kind of share with us your key experiences, your academic and professional goals, which climate core course and really Columbia Business School course you are most interested in engaging in. And I want to just stress you have up to 1,000 words, interestingly, in this statement of purpose to submit. I think that's an unusually long statement of purpose for a graduate application, but I think it's something that's a very critical piece when submitting your admissions application. Our committee really wants to understand who you are, what your perspective is and lived experience. When you raise your hand in the classroom, how are you going to be contributing to the overall learning community? And so many times I'll have one-on-one appointments with students and they'll say, Alfred, how do I differentiate myself? Or what advice do you have to make me more competitive? It's always important to remember when the admissions committee is reviewing your candidacy, not only are they evaluating you to determine you're fit for the program and to ensure that you have the necessary academic foundation to succeed in the curriculum. They're also thinking about what the cohort looks like from the network standpoint. So, what are you going to bring when you come to the MS in Climate Finance program? So, it's always important to just highlight when you're writing your statement of purpose, make sure the admissions committee understands kind of what you will bring to the table when you are engaging in this learning community. Okay, so now we are going to formally transition to our faculty panel. Again, joining us is Professor Lisa Sachs, Professor Bruce Usher, and Professor Zoey Zhou. Thank you guys so much for making time for this virtual information session. I know the students are always hungry to hear and learn more kind of about the program through the faculty's lens. So what I would love to do is just begin the faculty with some broad questions, and then at this stage, I also want to welcome students going ahead and typing questions in the Q&A. Again, if I can just stress these, I encourage you to ask questions really that are appropriate for our faculty. So if it's application questions, definitely let's schedule one-on-one time or email us in the admissions inbox. So, first and foremost, if I could maybe begin with Professor Lisa Sachs, what are the general academic goals of the MS in Climate Finance program, and how do the core courses fit into that?
Thank you so much. And Alfred was right. I'm so delighted to see where all of you are from. It's incredibly exciting, and it's one of the most wonderful things about Columbia in general, New York City in general, and our program in particular is the absolutely incredible international diversity of our students and the experiences and the backgrounds and the motivations and the interests of the students and the richness of that student community is really an aspect of itself of the program's benefits and values. This program really is, as far as I can see, the only program like it of its kind, where students take core courses at the climate school in climate science, in the mitigation pathways, and understanding adaptation, in rigorously understanding really the whole international financial architecture and the different institutions and rules and structures that shape global finance, and then take the same core curriculum at the business school that MBA students take in fundamentals of valuation and corporate finance and understanding climate risk and climate finance. And I therefore are really have a really solid foundation in both finance and both climate to be able to think analytically and critically and thoughtfully about that intersection, which is relevant in practically every institution right now on the planet that is in some way thinking about how climate change is shaping the nature of risks, opportunities, mandates, responsibilities, and so on. I think just the one other thing I would say is that the program really encourages and supports really thinking. This is not just learning about a field that's set, it's really learning about what the challenges are, what exists, what's not working, what could work better. You learn that both in the classroom, but also from the practitioners who are experiencing this. So I have been saying, and I believe that our graduates really are the most thoughtful practitioners in the space, distinguishing what the different challenges are, what the different opportunities are, and how to apply the skills and tools and knowledge that they're gaining in this all too brief program to really work in very different fields afterwards. So that's a long answer to your great question, Alfred.
No, that's great. Thank you, Lisa. And then transitioning to Bruce, so sometimes we get students that are connecting with us and they're thinking about us and maybe a program at a traditional business school. Could you speak to why students should attend this program versus a traditional business school setting?
Of course, Alfred, and hi everyone. They're really very different degrees, even though you're taking courses in the business school. And the difference is that a MBA is a broad business degree program. It's 2 years long. No matter what your interest is, you will be taking courses across the board in business, course in management and marketing and accounting and analytics and more to get this broad business education. The MS in climate finance, conversely, is a very specific focus on climate and finance, obviously. And so what I would say for applicants is if you know specifically what you want to study, if your focus is very much on climate change and finance, or maybe a little broader than finance, then I think this is the right degree program for you. If you're thinking more broad, I'm looking at a sort of broader business education, then an MBA is a better fit. They really are very, very different degrees.
Thank you, Bruce. And then maybe pivoting back to Lisa, and I think it's always helpful when we talk about this inaugural cohort where they are coming from. But could you share with us kind of what backgrounds you are looking for with applicants? Professor Lisa Sachs chairs our admissions committee for the climate finance program.
Yeah, and I made it complicated for the admissions committee because there isn't a standard profile. Really, it's remarkable to see the very different interests and backgrounds of the students coming. But when forced to give some broad contours, I would say it's really two very distinct um, broad categories of those who come from a background or an interest in finance and would like to learn more about climate and climate pathways, the climate science, um, to bring the financial tools or experiences they might have to the climate and broader energy and transition challenges and opportunities. And then those who have come from or have been mostly thinking about climate and climate change and what they want to do on climate change and want to understand the role of finance or the implications for finance. So there's a lot of variance within that, and many haven't had professional experience, but realize that this is such a critical intersection, and so know right away don't have that background, but this is the intersection they want. But it's really there's not one profile. I would say, just because Alfred said it about how important the statement of purpose is, that's what I would say is the most compelling aspect of an applicant, is that they really are interested in this particular intersection. And it goes to what Professor Usher said too, why this program and not the business school and not the other wonderful programs we have at the climate school that don't have such a core focus on finance, because they're required courses in this program on finance that the other programs at the climate school don't have. So I think it's the intention, the thoughtfulness of why this is the intersection that one wants to study that makes the candidates distinct, even though they come from very different backgrounds.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. And I'd love to now transition and note that we have many dynamic electives embedded within the program. Tricia thoughtfully walked through both the electives at Columbia Business School and the Climate School. And I'd love to transition now to Zoe. Can you share some courses that you're most excited to teach in the program and why?
Absolutely. And hello, everyone. I'm Zoe. So I cannot really overstate how strong the elective offering are in our MSCF program. And very excited to offer actually two new courses. One is sustainable debt, and the other is biodiversity risk and finance to this very wonderful portfolio. So let me take biodiversity course as an example. I think it will be actually one of the first master level classes in the world that actually really understand how nature is shaping the financial system. So in our class, I think we're gonna take a look at, say, voluntary biodiversity market nature depth swap, and other very interesting tools so that we will really be at the center for lots of interesting discussion, and also while bringing lots of guest speakers from the practitioner, because we're at your city, so it's super easy to really invite them, and we will just have some fun to really also keep in touch on the data, utilize large language modeling or utilize satellite data to really evaluate the ecological system changes so that we can really equip our financial system. Yeah, so I cannot be more excited to share more about our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful elective courses to our students.
Thank you, Zoe. And then the next question, this is for both Bruce and Lisa, and it's always about kind of opportunities post-degree program. So what types of careers might students pursue following the MS in Climate Finance program? And maybe if we could start with Bruce on the private sector front, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. So in the private sector fund, I'd say there's sort of two paths for those who are sort of recent graduates, perhaps going from undergraduate right into this 1 year master's program. The path is clearly is into a financial analyst role, either on the sell side in investment banking or on the the asset management side, what some of us refer to as the buy side. So that traditional financial analyst role. The difference here from a financial analyst role, say coming out of just an undergraduate degree, is you have this extra level of expertise that both I think enhances your ability to get those roles and also in roles that are ideally focused on, let's say, renewable energy or energy infrastructure or perhaps sustainability more broadly. For those who are a little later in their career, perhaps have worked for, five years or more, this would be a path more to associate or VP type roles, again, in banking or asset management. And in this case, this deeper domain expertise is going to allow you to sort of go deeper into those fields. So, for example, you could end up working for a renewable energy private equity fund, which there are now several very, very large ones out there. And this degree would lead to those sort of roles.
Excellent. And Lisa, could you speak maybe to the public sector side?
Yeah, and now this time, as opposed to last year, I can speak with some experience because I've been talking a lot with their students this year about the roles that they're interested in, and it affirms what we suspected, which is that there's just an incredible diversity of opportunities, by the way, even in the private sector, but not necessarily in traditional finance firms. We have a lot of students who are interested in tech companies and data centers that are doing interesting things with how digital tools can enhance efficiency or optimize the grid. Or we've been looking at automotive sectors or other sectors that we're actually having expertise in how to make transitions financeable and what are the innovative ways to finance some of these new products, or how can new technologies be integrated in interesting ways into existing infrastructure, is really motivating the students. So we've charted out about 15, maybe 20 different big categories, and where the students are interested, so we can match them with people in our network. But to your specific question, let me complement the private sector with lots of opportunities in development finance institutions, in the multilateral banks around the world, in the public sector, and those who in green banks in the U.S. and in state agencies and state and city actually agencies and utilities that are doing incredibly interesting things during this time of transition. I so And in philanthropy, some students are interested in civil society organizations. So, in fact, someone just said recently, so I'll just quote that kind of unlike some of the other professional schools where there is um, a more traditional route, I think in this degree program, there's really not. And actually, there are a lot of hidden gems that we're uncovering every day where the skill set of this cohort is really uniquely valuable to this evolving landscape.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Forgive me, I'm always the mute button's always a challenge for me. So I have another question, and maybe if I could pivot to Bruce, could you? We have an interesting number of students that are interested, prospective students that are interested in kind of startups and maybe entrepreneurship. Could you discuss resources and maybe I know you're at the Tamer Institute, but possible resources for students that are interested in startups?
Yeah, we have a unique uh, fund at Columbia University called the Tamer Fund for Social Ventures. It's part of the Tamer Institute, which I co-direct. And this fund is eligible to any early stage social venture, which includes, of course, any venture that's focused on climate change. It can be for profit or nonprofit. It's eligible to any Columbia University student or faculty or alumnus. So even after you've graduated from the program, you'd be eligible. And applicants go through a due diligence process. So you take your venture through a 6 week process with a team of Columbia Business School students and Columbia Climate School students through a course called Investing in Social Ventures. And that due diligence process takes the applicants and ultimately makes recommendations to the Tamer Investment Fund, which I chair that committee. What's interesting about it, if you're starting up an early stage climate venture, or perhaps already have started one, but it's still quite early in its progress. I recommend you apply to this fund because if you do get funded, it's $25,000 grant, and it comes with some other support as well, some networking support and the like, and sort of the imprimatur of Columbia University. And even if your venture does not get funded, the due diligence process is extremely useful to then going out and raising capital. It sort of takes you through the process and allows you to improve upon your business plan and your pitch. It's unique to Columbia University and something I highly recommend.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bruce. And then we actually have one question that I really enjoy. Ian, I've interacted with Ian. Ian's phenomenal. So Ian asks, how well does the curriculum prepare students to work on climate finance challenges in small island developing states, more specifically the Caribbean? Does the program collaborate with organizations working in the Caribbean region? Um, on real world projects, and are there pathways for students to focus their research or capstone work on those markets? Lisa, would you have any insights on that?
Yeah, we have a yes. So short answer, the short real answer is that we work one-on-one with students to ensure that where their deep interest is, that we're matching them with the research and the network and the partners that we have working on these issues all over. So even if we don't have a course in every topic, although we definitely in courses, I can speak to the ones that I teach in climate change mitigation, international climate finance. We'll talk about the distinct challenges um, in many different geographies, and can integrate the interests of students in these courses. But outside of the classroom, constantly meeting with students, and you're interested in small island states, which is a true example this year. We are closely connected with CARICOM, with governments who are with actually we have a professor at the law school, Professor Michael Gerard, who's been working with small island states in their climate challenges for many, many years. So we connect students with those within the Columbia community and outside the Columbia community to learn more, to find opportunities to be engaged. And then there's always opportunity if there's not a class that's dedicated to that topic, to integrate these interests into the classes that we do have.
And then Zaid asks, there's many blockers to climate finance, or many blockers to climate finance are structural. What roles do you see graduate students playing in solving these issues, especially given the scale of the issues?
I have to take that because it feels like a plant. I don't know who said that, but thanks, and I'll send you my $5 later. This is the structural issues are core to what my colleagues and I work on. There are challenges, but there are such clear solutions, actually. And it's what is motivating to me and to my colleagues too, which is that we know the challenges, and so we need to bring clarity and and ideas in different institutions to address those challenges. So um, we are just maybe to name, this is really what we do in international climate finance, the class, and it's what we do at CCSI. So it's hard to cover in a nutshell, but what I would say in a nutshell, what I would say that many of the structural issues relate to risk, perceptions of risk, real risks. Some of those risks are structural. Some of the risks relate to new projects, first of a kind integrations. And so we think in each case, what can address these risks? Planning, guarantees, risk sharing tools. And then we work with partners all over to think, how could we do this differently? We bring together different communities of practice to think how we can collectively de-risk investments. So that's a very short answer to a real answer, which is that we should really understand what those barriers are so that we can collectively address them. But that's absolutely core to the program.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. That was an interesting Dr. Sachs and his travels. There's another question about Professor Sachs as she travels and speaks at several central banks. Well, what's interesting is Trisha highlighted there's a specific elective course that that's going to be offered, correct, Professor Sachs, that Jeffrey Sachs is going to be teaching in the spring. That's extremely popular. I would call it a hot ticket item, right? I think Trisha, in fact, might have noted that, where students are going to be visiting some multilateral organizations. Another question, maybe for specifically for Bruce, can you speak more broadly? Because I have one slide on Columbia Business School, but I would love to hear maybe more broadly from you, Columbia Business School, how they performed in the climate space, if you could kind of highlight that.
Put it simply, I think we're the leading business school in the world on climate change. And I say that because partly the advantage we have is twofold. One is we're part of Columbia University. So in working with the climate school to put together this program and working with scientists and other parts of the university on climate change. There's this vast resources here at the university. And the second big advantage we have is Columbia Business School is a very large business school. I think actually it may have just become the largest business school in the US by number of students. And so that mass allows us to develop a lot more courses and programming than a smaller school at a smaller university would have. And so we have a large number of climate focused or broad, sometimes more broadly sustainability focused courses. And that relates to this program because, as one of the slides was showing earlier, we have a large number of electives to choose from. And those electives are constantly being updated and added to as the sector expands. So, for example, this year we have a new course on financing infrastructure. It's a US focused course. We also have a course on financing infrastructure in emerging markets. And so the infrastructure market here in the US has grown very dramatically in the recent years because of AI and other things. So as a business school, we can add those electives, and were you to join the program next year, I would expect some additional new electives as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bruce. We've got another question. Nabil from Morocco indicates, I'm curious about the current recruitment landscape in climate finance. We've seen some private asset managers step back from net zero alliances recently, which definitely doesn't help with the climate anxiety. But at the same time, it feels like there are more sustainability and climate focused roles emerging than ever. How do you see this dynamic evolving? And what skills will be most in demand moving forward? Maybe can we start with Lisa?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great question. I think one thing that is not yet really widely appreciated is how much now the climate agenda aligns with other agendas of efficiency, of smart mobility, of affordability, of resilience. And so actually what's driving a lot of new new innovation, new tech up, new thinking within companies and within financial institutions and others is not even the climate agenda. It's that this has become a compelling agenda for other reasons. So I think you're exactly right that we're seeing opportunities and institutions and departments within institutions that didn't appreciate these skills before and now are. I will also say that this is what we're doing with the Career Services Office is even helping these institutions understand why students who have these two skill sets are uniquely qualified to help the institutions think through these new and evolving challenges. So I'm not yet worried about the landscape, worried about other things in this country, but I think that the both imperative and the opportunities and the reality of risks. And by the way, there's also the insurance sector, and there's many other sectors that are not going anywhere where these skills will be very useful. So I think we need to think outside of the box sometimes and look for where those hidden gems are. And that's what we're doing very actively with the Career Services Center.
Alfred, if I can just add a comment on that point, because I think it's a very interesting point. It's important for applicants to look beyond the hype of what goes on around climate change, and that goes both ways. So, for example, if we were having this discussion in 2022, I would say, beware of too much hype. It was kind of a period of greenwashing. Everybody was talking about climate change, everything. It sounded like every company in the planet was doing something about it, and honestly, a lot of it was exaggerated. Now, here in 2025, you don't hear so much, particularly from the private sector, and there's political reasons for that and the like. So we're kind of in an area of what we call green hushing. People aren't talking so much about it. But the reality is the underlying business, the opportunities, when I say business, it includes multilaterals and the like, the amount of activity hasn't really changed. If anything, it continues to grow. Put that in context, renewable energy is now a bigger industry than the entire global fossil fuels industry. Right? These are massive industries. Even here in the US, where politics have changed dramatically. But in terms of the business, over 90% of new power constructed in America in 2025 is solar, wind, and batteries. It's renewables. And so, again, try to avoid the hype in the media and what you read when you're thinking about careers in a sector. Where's their actual activity and what are the trends that are likely to continue to propel those industries to grow? And the trends here are obviously the science of climate change. In other words, we must reduce emissions over the next several decades, and the opportunities to decarbonize, the technologies that exist, the business that exists. So many of them are very competitive already. And the capital exists. There's a lot of capital in this space. So that's the important thing to focus on here.
Thank you, Bruce. We have another question, and if maybe Bruce or Lisa or Zoe, forgive me, I'm like anybody, but this is a great question. How can we see the degree as a value add for people who are already working in the climate finance space? And we do have a number of students who were working in the climate finance space and decided to transition to this phenomenal opportunity. Does anybody want to specifically tackle that one?
I think we would each have something
Yeah.
different to say. So I wonder if I can put Zoe and Bruce on the spot too. And I'll start with one, um, which is that I think it's very valuable in the sector to see the broader lens of um, of pathways of understanding beyond what I think those who are currently working on climate, usually those who are working in climate finance are familiar from one approach, one set of tools, one institution, and this is a really vast space with a lot of dynamics. So I could say many other things, but maybe one that I would just say is from my experience of those who have come in this cohort with some experience in climate finance, it's been eye-opening, I think, in every class to go deeper in areas that they know, but really to go broader and to expand their network and their horizon to understand the broader context of this evolving landscape. So that would be my at least one answer.
And I would just really briefly say to add to what Lisa said, if you have deep domain expertise, let's say in finance, let's say you've been doing capital markets, you already know that area. You just test out of it. You test out of that part of the program of those courses, and take other electives. And as I mentioned earlier, between the climate school electives and business school electives, there's no shortage of opportunity for you to go, broaden your skill set, which I think is valuable in this sector.
Um, adding real quick, so I totally agree with what Lisa and Bruce said earlier, but I want to add one more potential very unique advantages, which is network. You are here to really enjoy everything offered by Columbia, offered by New York City, so definitely please come.
Excellent. And that does bring us to time. There are some really great questions in the Q&A. Feel free to send us those emails. We will 100% get those answered for you. But I just wanted to say thank you to Professor Lisa Sachs, Bruce Usher, and Zoe Zhou. Thank you so much for your time. And again, for anybody that joined the call today, the application is live, so go ahead and start the application if you haven't already done so. Thank you, everybody, and take care.